Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of SUGTalks. I'm Craig Dale, your host, and together with our special guest, we'll take a deep dive into the topics, challenges, and opportunities facing SAP users today. Please make sure you do subscribe so you never miss any of our future episodes. I'm delighted today to be joined by Simon Nichols, CEO and founder at Thrive. So welcome back, Simon.
Thank you for having me, Craig. As always, it's always an honour to be on these podcasts with you.
Oh, it's great to have you. And in today's episode, we're going to be discussing how to deal with negativity bias and how we can perhaps refrain our thoughts to see things in a more positive light. You know, we'll take a look at some strategies that you can employ in your everyday life, even when those around us or the wider world carry a sense of negativity. And just before we get into that, Simon, I know you love this part. Who is the person in your life who most inspires positivity?
Oh, that is it's like asking a child who the favourite parent is. I mean, it's me normally, yeah.
Well, while you think about that, and funnily enough, what you've just said there, I'm just going to go with what came straight into my mind about what leaves me feeling absolutely positive every time, and that's my 3-month-old granddaughter. The smile she gives just melts all of those negatives away and leaves only positives. So maybe that's a bit of a cop-out from me, but there we go, that's mine.
Well, yeah, the immediacy was obviously my beautiful and lovely wife, Kelly, who is just the yin to my yang, that positive element. But I also work with some incredibly positive individuals within Thrive, and you listen to them and wow, you just feel a bit better. And then I've got 5 lovely children who all inspire positivity in me as well. So yeah, what a very loaded question, but I think it's a wonderful segue into what we're going to be talking about, which is you just asked me to think about positivity, and I've immediately gone into all these wonderful individuals in my life that actually inspire me on a daily basis. I'm getting goosebumps, genuinely getting goosebumps at the moment, because you've just released chemicals in my brain, and how easily, on just a simple question on a podcast, have you changed the way that I'm thinking? And you're an expert at this now, aren't you, Craig?
Well, don't be under any percent, Simon, that I know you haven't answered that question. However, we are just going to move on. Thank you for those inspirational thoughts there from those that inspire you. And just moving on to our subject, as you've nicely moved us into, could you give us an overview of what negativity bias is and how it affects us directly?
I will. You obviously didn't like my politician's answer, did you? There's lots of people inspire me daily. So let's think about what negativity bias actually means as well. And this is where my goosebumps are going to come out again, Craig, because I'm going from this lovely world of positivity and excitement and enjoyment and things that make me feel happy, and now I'm going to start talking about negative things, and my body, like you might even hear my language change on the podcast, and it's not, it's no fault of my own. It's just that when we think about negativity bias, what we're thinking about really is it's negativity bias is an influencer. Okay, let's get that straight out there. It's an influencer on the way that we feel, the way we think, and the way we act. I just mentioned there, you made me feel better by talking about positive things. If we'd have come on and said, right, who's the most negative person in your life? That would have been a lot longer question. I'd have come up with lots of people, the government, everything in the world that's negative. But negative bias really thinks about it's how we focus on negativity way more than we focus on positivity. And we'll go into a lot more detail around what that means. But we will always expect the worst. Okay, no matter what situation we're in, there is something that's going to happen that's going to be bad. And why do we think that? well, we used to live with lions and tigers and bears, and we used to live with alligators and snakes that ate us up whole, and we used to fall off of cliffs. And so what we expect bad things to happen because it keeps us alert and it keeps us safe. So negativity bias is actually a form of security for us. If I always expect the worst to happen, then I'm prepared for it. We don't live necessarily with lions and tigers and bears anymore on a daily threat basis, but we have other threats now and other impacts and influences that directly result to that negativity bias. But in short, it's a way that we it's a thought process to actually help us survive. But when we notice that negativity bias happening, especially on a daily basis, that's when we need to do something about it.
So thanks for that. I know you've mentioned on our previous discussions about it's almost like a natural propensity for us to lean more towards a negative than it is towards a positive. And I suppose that it's like, you mentioned they're expecting the worst. It's that fight or flight, isn't it? When we look at things, we either move towards a positive or we're running away from the negative or the pain. And so what we're saying is we're more inclined to move away from the pain or think about the pain or the negative.
We're more inclined also, and studies have shown that we are 5 to 1. So we are 5 to 1 more drawn to, more able to understand negativity than we do positivity. It's 5 to 1. Think about that. For every 20% of positive thoughts, 100% we're thinking negative thoughts. That's really skewed version on percentages. I get that. 80-20, let's just go with that. But we're 5 times more likely to think of something. And let's think about the news at the moment, okay? Do we tend, what gets put on the front page? Is it a lovely cat has gone water skiing? No, it's what's going on in the Middle East. It's what's going on in America. It's all the negative things. We are drawn to those depressing articles because actually our body gets impacted more by negative events. And you might think that's a bad thing, but when you think about it, it's a feeling. When you see something that doesn't assign itself to your beliefs, you get angry. Don't you? You get that person's political beliefs are not the same as mine. You get frothy. You get and then your heckles come up and your shoulders come up and you're defending yourself against something that you didn't even know needed to be defended. I am offended and I'm defending against the tariffs that Trump's putting in. It's like, well, yeah, but I can't do anything about it. And I think that's the thing. And when we think about wild newspapers, what sells in newspapers, we don't really consume newspapers in the way we did before. We consume online articles. And the online articles is migrants in boats. Okay, let's not talk about socio-economic impact with the unemployment situation in the UK. Let's talk about other people, because what we do there is we divide and conquer and we push people down a thought process, and that's what sells those online articles, and that's what gets all of those individuals feeling something. And let's not forget, just because it's a wrong feeling, it's a negative feeling, people sometimes want to feel something about something. And so, when we think about the news and we call it, you and I have spoken many times about doom scrolling. Why do we do it to ourselves? Why do we put ourselves in that? Because actually we find it a natural state. The world's gone wrong, so I was proved right. It was all a load of rubbish. And then I'm going to go out of that meeting and go into another meeting and then take all that negativity with me. So, it's a real issue at the moment, especially we're so switched on to news. We get it immediate. There's an accident or an incident in Australia. We find out about it in seconds. And we find out about it all at once. And I think that's where as a society, that's where we've probably got to look at the change.
Yeah, true. And I think we've been banging on about this for the last 4.5 years that we've been recording this podcast, to be honest, but clickbait as well, that's a whole other conversation. So how, with all that in mind, how can we identify negativity bias in ourselves and in our lives?
It's a lovely question, and it's very similar to the same way that we can notice when good things happen to us as well, and we notice that by. We have to identify patterns, okay? This is the real important thing, and this is a thing that people struggle with. Am I thinking like this all the time? So when I think of something, when I have a thought, how does it make me feel? And how do I react to that? There was a situation, and my wife loves bringing it up, whereby I'm not going to name names. I'm not going to organisations into thing, and this is not really political. But there's a sense of management that goes on in various cities and organisations around the world, which means that sometimes hedgerows get removed, or lovely grass fields of meadows get mowed down. And as I'm walking past, the beautiful meadow that was there last week is now really short grass because it looked a bit unsightly. You can see my hackles are rising now. I'm thinking about how beautiful that meadow was. My actions. Look, my hackles are rising again. I'm getting incensed. I'm feeling sad on behalf of all the pollinators and the butterflies and the insects, and then I'll rant. And since moving to Lincolnshire, there is less of that sort of. I don't live in a big city anymore, which means there are less meadows being mown down. There are less hedgerows being managed for human beauty. But it's my thoughts affecting my feelings and impacting my reactions. And my heart rate's raised, Craig, even thinking about someone mowing down. Now, you extrapolate that pattern is to how do I feel about climate control? How do I feel about Trump? How do I feel about the UK government? How do I feel about, and do. And isn't it interesting? We've personified an entire country by one individual because of the impact that individual is having on all of our thoughts, all of our feelings. So we need to recognize patterns. We read, if by reading something or going somewhere impacts us to this rage level, this incandescent, intense. I don't want to feel like this. My palm. I'm gripping my palms here for people who can't see on the video, because it affects me so much. So what do I have to do? Well, I have to recognise the pattern and where I'm dwelling on it as well, because our thoughts are only there because we put them there. We can change our thoughts. We change our thoughts, we change our feelings. We change our thoughts and our feelings, we change our reactions. We change our actions. So, yeah, we have to recognise in ourselves that these patterns are forming. Every time I talk to Craig about Middlesbrough games or whatever, I can see, look, there we go. And that's the thing. That it's the dwelling, it's the acknowledging that you're dwelling on them, and maybe it's the acknowledgement that you're getting angry about it as well. And that's when we're sort of thinking about the negativity element of our thoughts and feelings.
Well, thanks for that, Simon. We got beat 4-0 last night, so thanks for bringing that up at this. And I fully understand you will not have a clue that happened last night. But yes, thank you. So now your heckles are rising, your heart rate was increasing. You may be pushing me down that same route now. So when we've done that, you mentioned there changing our thoughts. So how can we respond to it when we identify it?
Well, when we so as I say, we need to identify it first. So what we need to think about is did this upset me the last time? I mean, with this was last night. I do apologise. I should probably check Borough results before I come on here.
No, there's no need to check. They don't change. Just.
But there you go. The first one there you're talking about is memory recall, isn't it? This has always happened, hasn't it? You've always been beaten 4-1. Of course you haven't. There was glory years, and you remember 1980. I don't know any of this, but there are glory years. But we tend to get them. So think about when you try and remember if you felt like this before. Is it often? And you might say yes. Yes. But and do you recall that negative way more than you recall the positive? And the answer is probably yes, because I felt the pain, and sometimes I feel the pain more than I feel the joy. But actually, and let's turn this into a workplace scenario as well. When you're in a meeting and you've said something, you might have said some amazing things, but you said one negative comment, and you come away from that and you think, oh, that was just terrible. The whole conversation hinged on me saying the wrong word at the wrong time. So think about memory recall, and you've got to pay attention to what you remember. You also need to think about how you respond. Okay, so when we're noticing these patterns, how do you respond? Because if you respond, do you respond in a negative way, or do you respond in a neutral way? The longer the memory disappears, if it's still impacting you negatively, that emotional reaction, then actually you need to start replacing that, and we'll talk about reframing a little bit later, because again, the recognition is the most important one. The third element I'd like to think about is about your focus and attention. Are you always drawn to that negative thought that you've just been having there? Right now, yeah, I'm sure right at the back of your mind is 4-1, bloody 4-1, 4-1, and you sort of you might still be thinking about that 2 or 3 meetings down the road, because it's so impactful for you. So what you need to do is you need to think about, am I thinking about this too much? Observing where your attention is with that thought process. And it's very difficult. It's easy for me to sit here on this podcast and say, right, okay, so you need to focus on it, you need to understand it, you need to recognize it, and then you need to think about what you can do. How is this going to reflect on my mood moving forward? Because it's a conscious decision for us to move from negative to positive thoughts. We have to want to change them in the first place. And some of us revel in being a mood hoover. Some of us revel in, I want to feel negative. I want to feel impacted. It's my standard operating system is to feel aggrieved on behalf of everybody else, and it's very difficult to counteract that within the workplace. But we've got a few hints and tips coming up that might be able to help you do that. So notice it, observe it, see if it's re-impacting you. Even the memory of it is re-impacting you. And at that point, we can then start to see, well, what can we put in place to actually help you get through it? And I think that's what we're moving on to next. What can we do? When I notice the pattern, what can I do to make that feel better? For me, I'll give you my very quick one off the bat before we talk about this a little bit more. Mindfulness. Mindfulness is my go-to whenever I feel that there's a level of overwhelm. Okay, and a lot of people I know do struggle with mindfulness, and we talk about it a lot at the SAP User Group Conference. But mindfulness really, for me, still top of the tree of being able to just take a breath, move away from those thoughts to bring myself into a different frame of mind.
Thank you.
We know our community, but we don't know yours yet. Why not share the benefits of your UKI Sub membership with those who don't know about us? The UKI Sub referral scheme rewards you for helping to grow and develop our community. You can check out the link in the description to find out more about how you can get involved. Terms and conditions apply. We hope you enjoy the rest of the podcast.
And I'm not going to dwell in the negative side of things, but if it was 1, then that might have been a slight positive, but it was 4-0. So, there wasn't even the 1 in there. But you also mentioned there about meetings. You talked about the workplace. You touched on that. And, if I was in a meeting, I said one negative word, and that's what I focus on. So how can negativity bias affect us in the workplace?
Overwhelming, especially if we're in a toxic workplace, and we hope that no SAP organisations ever have that toxicity, but we also know that large corporations, sometimes you're in an isolated office, or you're in, and individuals conflict with each other. So it's very important to recognise that within the workplace that negativity bias is going to be there, ever present. And where does it come from? Well, it comes from other people. It also comes from the unknown as well. And we've spoken many times around communication. One of the key things within an organisation is I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going to happen next week. I've heard through the internet, through the negativity of the manufacturing industry falling off the edge of a cliff, that this organisation X is possibly going through restructuring at some time in the next 10 years. That means I'm losing my job next week. That's that negativity bias. I've gone through. I've already, I've already planned my what I'm going to do with my redundancy money. So you're not knowing the unknown impacts our negativity bias intently. So again, that communication, we notice there's been some information in the news. Let me please reassure you that we are not going to be impacted by this, etc., etc., etc. So it's about that communication with people, but it's also about misinterpretation. And misinterpretation is the king of, and let's put it in another way, overthinking. All right. So Craig said to me the other day that he didn't like insert whatever it is here and walked away. A fairly seemingly innocent thing. However, 4 years ago, I bought Craig one of those for the Secret Santa. Oh my God, Craig. So the CEO of the SAP user group just, oh my God, he's hated me for 4 years because I bought that. And you gave no context to your hatred of that item. It could have been that it was a beautiful thing, it was lovely, it fell on your foot. And because you didn't give a lot of information out, that person has gone back 4 years, extrapolated every single hatred thought that you'd ever had for that item, and suddenly personified you as not liking them as well. Because we've leapt, we've gone from 1 to 100 almost immediately. And that's because I focused in on one thing. You said you didn't like it. And why didn't you like it? It must be me. It must be. And now we can get into the whole world of anxiety at this point. Because you only gave a very short bit of information. If you go back, I hate it because, I've had to get another shelf to put it on because it looked so lonely on the, that little bit of extra information. But we very rarely get that in the workplace, do we? We say, can you come in my office? Oh my God, I'm being fired. I'm being sacked. What's going on? So again, in the workplace, lots of information in the right way and communicated clearly can actually stop us immediately going into that negative spiral.
Thank you. So right now, I want to switch to the positive now.
Yes.
So let's talk about strategies that you can maybe use to reframe your experiences in a positive light, or to move on from that negativity bias more easily. So for instance, I'm going to reflect back to Middlesbrough last night. We were knocked out of the cup, so we can focus on winning the league.
What did any of the players? Were there any new players put in last night? Were there any players that performed better? Was there, even though the other team, what was different? Could we learn anything? We often talk about these, the failures are, we talk about things as failing. All right, well, is what we should be doing. Let's talk about reframing again. Okay, you're absolutely right. We lost yesterday. But that's just going to make us more hungry. When we re-meet this team, we're going to study their tactics, we're going to put more effort in, and we're going to beat them next time. We are going to beat them next time. My positive bias is driving me towards that. And it's all about taking the smallest nugget of sunshine that you possibly can to say, actually, next time, this will be better. What's my positive takeaway from mowing the verges is they need to be mowed. I just wish they'd do it in August instead of July. Well, how could I impact that? Well, maybe I can write to the council and say, could I suggest that you mow a little bit later in the year? Oh, what a really good thing. I've done something. I've made a positive contribution or a positive effort. So what we need to try and do from a reframing and is take that thought, maybe adopt a bit of mindfulness, some change in breaths. Right, where is the positive in this? And it might be that you can't see any positive in it, but at least you can find a neutral. Okay, this didn't work. If I did something different next time, would it work differently? Of course it would. Would it work better? I don't know. Let me try it. So what that actually does is that takes the ball of hurt and hatred and anger and actually try to sort of take some learnings out of it. Should I have said something different? Was it my conversation? Was it my thoughts and feelings that were impacted? And it's really good exercise when you think about if you're in a discussion with your loved one, if you're in they've done something wrong clearly, and it's all their fault. We do this externalization blame. You made me feel like this. How dare you? But what we never do is we never give that person the opportunity to make it better. You made me feel like this. How dare you? Oh, I'm feeling meek. I'm feeling sad. All of this sort of thing. Next time, could you not do this? And right now, could you give me a hug? You give someone an outlet to be better. And I think that's where sometimes in the workplace we don't give people the opportunity to make things better, to allow them to regroup, reframe how that incident went, and actually allow them to be better. And we've talked about psychological safety in the workplace many times, Craig. That's what psychological safety is. It allows people to fail. It allows people to feel bad about themselves, but it gives them the opportunity, the pathway for them to be more positive, to learn from it. And next time I can still make that mistake again, but I've done something different. How am I making that more positive? And it's reframing really requires a lot of time and effort. But the first one is your thought. Bang. I'm thinking like that. Challenge it. Am I able? Did Craig really mean he hated it, or should I find a bit more information out? Because having that invisible conversation with someone, you're only going to lose because your thoughts 5-1 will overwhelm you with negativity. So what we've really got to do with reframing, you've got to practice it. You've got to recognize that you're having the thought in the first place. You've got to challenge that thought, and then you've got to reframe it and think, could I have done it a different way?
Thank you. You went there because you mentioned about, you made me feel this way. And then you talked around that because a question on that, a quite side point. Can anyone make us feel a certain way? Isn't that us and our internal reference making ourselves feel that way?
The external forces that we experience are what impact our thoughts. So someone could say something, do something that we would then interpret as their impact upon us. The other individual could have framed or worded the accusation or the failure point in a much different way. Much different, that doesn't sound right. In a very different way. There are kind ways of telling someone that they haven't quite got to where they needed to be. We used to call it I'm not going to say the S word, the poo sandwich, didn't we? Which was do something good, tell someone why they have failed in the first place, and then give them that outlet. And we very rarely do that in the workplace. We just say, right, you haven't done this correctly. So yes, to a certain extent, but people can be kinder. And I think that's the key thing. Yes, of course, we'll take any information in and we'll translate it into our own narrative. But actually, if the delivery of that information is delivered in a slightly different way, if you're going to comment on something on social media, am I adding value or making the other person feel better? Or am I being judgmental? If I'm being judgmental, should I write that comment? The answer will always be no. If I'm going to cause that person potentially some thought pain, should I write it? No. The answer's no. It's always no. Don't go on social media. Be kind. If you're feeling aggrieved, you're feeling hurt and upset, you can still be kind while still putting your point across. But yes, you're right. We take in the stimuli, we create our own narrative, and it's about us changing that narrative or understanding why that person is doing that in the first place. And that's the other thing as well. And that therein lies the power of reframing. I know you've said that, but I'm gonna frame your thought process in a different way because it'll make my thought process different.
Thank you. And on the point of reframing, I had a question I wanted to ask you, but I'm going to reframe it so I can say on the positivity side of things. And it may or may not seem obvious, but why is it important to ensure that we retain the positive thoughts and we don't let negativity bias dominate us?
Oh, well, I mean, the studies around depression, stress, anxiety, the impact of those negative thoughts coursing through our bodies, the loneliness, the feeling of isolation, all of those impacts are demonstrable by the way that we think and feel and act. You've heard me talk about positivity and productivity. Positivity increases productivity 30% minimum. There's been studies shown on positive workplaces, how that impacts people they bring more of themselves to work. They bring ideas. They want to work there. They give discretionary effort. Your employees give you not 101%, they give you 200%. They bring themselves in. And that's what's so important for workplaces, is having staff, employees, team members, colleagues that want to be there, because otherwise it's just a job. And if it's just a job, and if the negative thoughts are there all the time, the toxicity, that will lead us to a pathway which is eventual leaving, potentially sadness, time off, a diagnosis of depression, blah, 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 blah. So reframing, appearing as positive as you can be, has such an important impact on our mental health. It's off the scale. It's, getting outside, walking in fresh air is as impactful on our bodies as mild antidepressants. So if we do something that's positive, do something that we love, and we get access to that dopamine, we get access to those endorphins, that will override those negative thoughts. And yeah, it's difficult, it takes time, and it may mean that you have to do something, you have to come out of your comfort zone and think about people in a different way. But positivity on your mental health is one of the single most important things you can do.
Thank you. And as we come to a close, Simon, is there any one thing you'd like our listeners to take away from our discussion today?
Consistency and patience. Okay, you have to work at this. Changing the way you think is a gradual process. Negativity bias, how you feel about something or someone or a group of people, has been there probably since birth. You've impacted it from your friends and your family. All of these experiences have come in to give you that thought or feeling around that negativity. You're bombarded daily by newspapers and articles. So if you think you can change it just like that, you're going to be mistaken. So you've got to practice at reframing. You've got to practice at changing how you think. And don't be discouraged if you don't get immediate results. Keep practicing the strategies. Keep thinking in a different way. And like any good venerable Chinese kung fu master, you must have patience. You must continue to think differently, and over time, your positive demeanor whilst it won't necessarily eradicate negativity, you'll be able to understand when negativity comes in your life. You'll be able to do something with it, and you'll be able to channel that negative energy in a positive way. Consistency and patience.
Simon, thank you. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your insights. And to our listeners, thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed the conversation and found it valuable. Please make sure you do subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. And until the next time, stay safe, stay well, and be positive.